Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Geek Space TV segment of our live interviews here at GaymerX East. Right now, we have Nikki and Matt.
Hey.
And they're going to show us 2064 read-only memories and also talk about GaymerX as a whole. So we can just jump right into the trailer right now and then speak about it later.
All right.
All right, so obviously we just saw a 2-minute trailer for this game. What is going on here?
Sure. So 2064 Read-Only Memories is a cyberpunk adventure point-and-click style game. Very kind of old school style with like the presentation, the way that the characters are presented, but talks about a lot of very modern things, a lot of futurology, a lot of there's this robot Turing is the main character, and they're the first sapient robot in the world. So you have to kind of like you adventure with them, trying to kind of solve this mystery, and through that you learn about this world of Neo San Francisco.
Oh, interesting. What are the kind of inspirations for creating this game?
Well, the main inspiration was I was a huge fan of Snatcher growing up, which is Hideo Kojima's kind of first big game that he made, and it really inspired me to see a game that, although the actual gameplay was pretty basic, it was more like a novel. The music and the graphics and the world that it created were so far ahead of their time. I thought that in the same way, maybe while the graphics, harken back to an older day, we talk about things and get into discussions that most games don't usually kind of get into.
Okay. How many people have worked on this game so far?
It's quite a bit. We've been working on this game for about 3 years now. We released an original version in 2015, and then we re-released it with new voice act. We didn't have voice acting in the original version.
Mm-hmm.
We added in voice acting, a whole bunch of new stuff. Nikki is our lead engineer, but we've had other engineers, and I believe that overall, probably about 20 people or so across the lifetime of the project.
Wow, great. So in general, what made this game feel special enough to finalize and publish? What is its main draw of this is a game that's worth bringing out to the public?
I felt like this was something where we could feature characters that don't normally get kind of the limelight. we run GaymerX, which is where we're at right now, and one of our goals is to really feature queer characters in meaningful kind of roles. And so with Read Only Memories, our goal was to create a good, enthralling story first and foremost, but having that intertwined with characters that are queer or are just underrepresented was something that was really important to us. And we thought, if we could kind of build that into our core mission, we can create a world where those characters don't feel like they're shoehorned in. They're actually integral to the story wouldn't work if we didn't have a diverse cast of characters. So I think that's really kind of our main thing, but also I think that we were able to work with really awesome artists, really awesome musicians that really made the entire experience just feel very novel and unique.
Great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking about GaymerX in general, obviously it started on the West Coast a few years ago, and now it's come over to New York City, and this is the second annual meeting of GaymerX East. What drew you to having it in New York City, and what were some of the trials and tribulations of getting that set up and everything?
Well, I mean, honestly, the only reason why we're able to do it in New York City is because Microsoft actually donated the space. Running an event is very expensive. From the logistics of travel and getting just everything. But usually the venue is usually the most expensive part, and so we definitely weren't looking to expand, but there's the Microsoft folks that we were chatting with were like, we really want to see this thing come out here, and we have this really awesome venue in Times Square, and we'd be happy to let y'all use it, and that really was kind of the catalyst having us bring it out here. I mean, we always knew that we wanted to bring GaymerX out to the East Coast, but in general, we want to bring GaymerX everywhere. We realized that this is an event that a lot of people would like to go to, but it's obviously very prohibitive to fly and stay in a major metropolitan area like San Francisco or New York, and at least by doing this, we can serve the East Coast communities. But we also realize that it's going to be very prohibitively expensive as well. That's one of our goals was bring it out to the East, but we're also hoping that we can continue to expand and bring it to other areas as well.
Fantastic. Is there anything down the pipeline that you can share of what city or what area that you're looking at, or is that more still in higher up talks? And
well, I mean, I think that we definitely want to keep doing GaymerX here in New York City, just because of as long as we can continue to use this location, we really like the space, and it works for our budget. For Gamer, we actually so we do an event in the Prime one in California, and we do the one here, as well as we do an event in Australia, GaymerX Australia. We took a year off from doing the main event. This year we only did the Australia event and GaymerX East. So we're looking at venues for GaymerX 5, looking at potentially, some of the venues we're using in the Bay Area, but the cost in the Bay Area is getting ridiculous. So we're also looking at Portland, we're looking at Seattle, we're looking at even potentially LA, or even maybe Reno. So we're looking at some other locations as well. We haven't locked anything down yet, but on one hand, San Francisco's great because of the history, and there's the nice intersection of tech and queer history, but at the same time, we also need to work within the confines of making it something that's sustainable. And we as much as we think our event's awesome, we are a mid-size queer gaming event, so we don't yet have the resources to rent out the Moscone Center just yet.
Just yet. Maybe 5-year plan, 10-year plan.
You never know. I mean, MagFest started as a 20-person event, and Gen Con started with like 8 people in someone's basement, and now Gen Con has over 100,000 people, and I don't think they're all that size, but you never know. I mean, when we first started doing GaymerX, I thought it'd be like 200-300 people, and we had almost 3,000 people the first year. Wow. So it, I think the demand is definitely there.
There's definitely a demand, absolutely. That's a good point. But backtracking to the game, could you tell us a little bit about the development process, and if there's anything that you really wanted to get a story in there, or maybe some sort of gameplay mechanic and it just wasn't able to get to production in time? Is there anything like that?
So I've mainly been working with Midboss since mid-June, so I kind of skipped over the entire development cycle of the game. I'm working on new stuff, but I'm also working on the development of Pulse, so we're hopefully reaching Switch and Xbox One soon. And kind of fumbling around with console development is always fun. But how about you? Are there any features that we added that?
Absolutely. No, I think that, Nikki's been working on like the Vita and Switch and Xbox and all those things, which is its own undertaking.
Oh, yes.
I think that in terms of gameplay, I feel like we didn't really hit the mark in terms of, I think that the story is really good, the characters really good, the art and the music, but I think that we had over the lifetime of the game, we had 4 different lead developers, and so I think that there wasn't really a super consistent vision at times, and so I feel like that's been kind of some of the caused some of the problems in terms of like some of the puzzles. I feel like also because it was our first game. I feel like conceptually looking back, they weren't the strongest that they could have been, and the gameplay elements didn't tie in as well as they could have into the story. So as we're working on some new things now, I feel like that experience has helped teach us to really be better at pre-planning those things as opposed to just going, oh, we'll have a puzzle in there, but we'll figure it out. Now we're really kind of, I think, figuring out like how do we, from planning, from the get-go, make something that is really going to be well integrated into the story and feel like a natural extension of the story as opposed to some weird modular puzzle that didn't really fit.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. It seems that people in general have that kind of issue where like, oh, I have a really great story to tell, but I don't really know how to make it into a game because I want interactive elements and not just walking simulators, which are wonderful in their own right, but sometimes people want to be able to do a little bit more with that. So I understand how that can be difficult.
That's one of the most interesting things about making games is that, you could focus on making a really interesting game, and the story might be terrible because all you're focusing on is just making interesting gameplay mechanics. Or you might have a really awesome story, but if you don't focus on the gameplay, then you might have basically like a visual novel or walking simulator where some people might want a little bit more interactivity, and think that the real challenge is figuring out how do you combine gameplay elements and the story in a way where they all kind of flow back and forth. Like games like Undertale actually did a really good job of where even when you're in these middle of the battles, the way that the enemies fight you tells you about their characters, or when you're in a good first-person shooter or something, the environmental storytelling helps inform you as opposed to them telling you, oh, this guy is messy. You can tell because of how the house is laid out.
Absolutely.
And that's hopefully something we're going to be addressing in future games and hopefully improving on.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful to know. Is there any other like key piece of advice that you want to give people who are either trying to create their own meetups or trying to create their own games or anything of that sort that you kind of want to get out there?
I would say from a like, this was something GaymerX never existed. Like there was never any LGBT kind of there's like small meetups. We never know there did anything big like this before. And I think if you feel like this is something like if you have an interest or that there's a community out there, just because it doesn't exist yet, like it doesn't mean that it can exist. I would say don't be afraid to take some risks and just be like, yeah, I'm gonna have this thing, and if no one shows up, then whatever, it's fine. And that was sort of the idea that we had when we made it. Was like, I just was like, yeah, maybe no one's gonna show up, and it's gonna be a total waste of time. But I believe this is something I want, and I believe there's other people who probably have the same feelings. And I think that you definitely shouldn't be afraid to take risks. But I'd say the pragmatic advice would be make sure you also have a budget. When we did the first 2 events, we didn't have a budget. We just were like, we're just going to make the very best event we can. And we basically racked up 6-figure debt, because we really did not. We just were like, we're just going to make the best thing ever, and we'll figure it out as we go. And while that worked in some ways, in the same way, like, we paid for those mistakes. So I think that if we had a much like stricter budget of like, this is how much we're spending on travel, or this is how much we're spending on food for volunteers, it would have been we wouldn't have had to gone through so many pain points. So I'd say think big, don't be afraid to take risks. At the same time, like try to keep it within a budget if you can.
Great.
I think that's definitely something you could definitely apply to game development as well.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Could you repeat, I don't think we talked about this, but like your websites and your Twitters so people know how to keep tabs on either this convention or the game that you showed?
Sure. So if you want to follow the game, it's called 2064 Read Only Memories. It's on Steam and PS4. You can follow it at ROM Adventure, ROM Adventure on Twitter, or you can go to Read Only Memories. That's readonlymemory.es. And you can follow the site, the game. You can also follow Midboss, the company, at We Are Midboss or midboss.com. And my name is Matt Kahn. I'm the founder of GaymerX, which you can follow at GaymerX, or you can follow me at Matt CONN.
And I'm Nikki, and you can find me at Chalblaw.
Well, how do you spell that?
CHALBLAR.
Cool.
All right, great. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your weekend to speak to us with your game and obviously the convention as a whole. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for coming out and helping make GaymerX East as awesome as it can be.
Great, thank you.